Hey guys, welcome back to Horsetooth Cinema. Today I'm going to be reviewing Disclosure Day. This just came out in theaters and is directed by the great Steven Spielberg. This film follows a cybersecurity expert played by Josh O'Connor, and from the opening minutes of the film we see him become a whistleblower to reveal secrets to the public that the government has been hiding about aliens, which puts him on the run from the government and a corporation. And meanwhile, a meteorologist played by Emily Blunt experiences a strange phenomena and joins forces with him to prove that there's life beyond our knowledge. So I've been pretty excited about this movie for months after having seen the trailers in theaters as far back as I think towards the end of last year. For a few reasons. One, I was super excited to see Spielberg come back to the world of aliens, which is something that he's, of course, dug into for decades now, from Close Encounters, E.T., War of the Worlds, and I think the last one he did was Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which maybe not the best example of him coming back to aliens, but I was curious what else he really had to say with the genre. And also, I was really excited because I've still not gotten around to his West Side Story remake, which I really need to get to. But because of that, I think Spielberg, the movies I've seen of his, from the 2010s onward especially, but even a little bit before that, he kind of went away from genre fare a little bit. He went away from a lot of the big grandiose set piece kind of movies that that really made him fall in love with movies and made so much of his audience love him as well. And I think about movies like Lincoln and Bridge of Spies, The Post, things like that. That's been kind of more of his interest lately. And the trailer gave away there's a big car chase sequence in the movie, so I was really excited to just see him go back to that kind of filmmaking again. After, I think the last time he did it was Ready Player One, which I really didn't enjoy. The last time I think I enjoyed a very set piece heavy Spielberg movie, again with the caveat that I haven't seen his West Side Story, is probably War Horse, which is a movie I think I'm a little bit higher on than maybe the average Spielberg fan. And I gotta say, I know that audiences are coming away from this a little mixed, and in some cases a little bit negative. I quite like this movie, and I think it's my favorite Spielberg movie in a while. I'd have to go back and see. Honestly, it's probably my favorite since War Horse, is my guess. One of the things I really liked about it, which, as I alluded to at the start, Spielberg is just a master craftsman, and he really knows how to have control over these action, set piece kind of movies. There's one section in particular where there's a few different devices of tension going on at the same time, where Josh O'Connor's girlfriend is kind of under the influence of this alien device, and you're worried for her about that. And at the same time, Josh O'Connor is outside, and the police are about to arrive, and so you're kind of wondering how this whole sequence is going to play out. It has a bunch of really distinct images of him stealing the car, one of the police cars, and kind of driving away to the house, driving through the house. It's just and the trailer kind of shows the car goes off a cliff at one point. That whole section of the movie was my favorite thing to watch. It was just a really, all these really distinct images and just tension, just really good, sort of rooting for these two characters to get away on the run from the law. And then you have other elements of the film involving the Coleman Domingo character, who seems to be playing this kind of, alien conspiracist a little bit, or I guess in the case of this movie, just somebody who also wants to help reveal the truth. And you have the whole storyline with Emily Blunt, who has this very bizarre moment where she's doing her job as an anchor on the news at one point, and she is sort of possessed by this alien possibly, and she starts speaking its language on the broadcast, and it's this weird clicking thing. And you follow her through the aftermath of that. I think these sections of the film can be a little less tense at times. I think sometimes they feel a little bit artificial as devices. They're sort of vehicles for, Emily Blunt and Coleman Domingo are sort of vehicles to intersect with the Josh O'Connor storyline by the end of the movie, which for me, that was the stuff I really cared about, kind of the central, revealing of the aliens. But even though it can feel like that at times, I do think it's ultimately worth it once we get the payoff at the end of the film, I think it becomes a lot more clear why those characters are so important, and why these storylines really do need to go to kind of come together. Another thing I remember asking myself in the theater was, what else does Spielberg really have to say about the alien genre at this point? E.T. and Close Encounters were both kind of vehicles for him to, kind of marinate on family relationships, and they have very different conclusions on, how they deal with that. Close Encounters being kind of the much more cold reality of this character really getting obsessed with this alien conspiracy to the point where it does ruin his relationship with his family, and that ends up not really mattering by the end of the film, at least, in the way it's kind of played, where he goes off into the spaceship. But even outside of Spielberg, there's still so much great alien genre fare that's come out in the latter half of the 20th century, especially. I thought a lot about John Carpenter as just, one of my favorite directors for the genre. Of course, The Thing, but in this one I was thinking a lot more about They Live, especially, with the central idea to reveal aliens to the wider public, and the sort of like on the hunt from the law and the government in particular. I did think a lot about Starman and the kind of road trip aspects in this movie. And I think for all of these examples, both the ones from Spielberg and the ones from, directors like Carpenter and some others, I think the thing that a lot of those movies have going for them is really strong characters. You think about, certainly I think about Jeff Bridges' character in Starman, or, the main character in Close Encounters, for example. These are just really, really strong, distinct, well-drawn characters with flaws and virtues, etc. I think Disclosure Day, they do feel a little bit more like they do feel a little bit more archetypal. They feel a little bit more functional as, devices to get you to the end of the movie. But I think it all kind of felt worth it for me by the time we got to the third act of the film, and we see really why I think Spielberg wanted to make this movie. I think this movie ultimately is kind of a plea from Spielberg to, he's using the alien device, the alien genre as, a way of asking humanity to once again kind of set aside our differences and have a moment of collective awe together about the universe. There are bits throughout the film where you can definitely see echoes of our modern social media landscape, our news landscape. For example, in the film, it's kind of constantly alluded to throughout that World War III is basically about to get started between Russia and some other countries and whatnot. One thing I liked about that was that it wasn't insulting. It wasn't so specific to our times or whatever that it was a don't look up kind of level of pandering. But it cited things that are really on the news today, just kind of an alternate version of events. And I think Spielberg, when he wrote this movie, he took a look at our social media landscape, our news landscape, and he said, well, if we go back to the movies in the alien genre, if there really was kind of a big reveal, I'm a little worried, would we have a moment of collective awe? Would we kind of appreciate our place in the cosmos, or would we just kind of start fighting each other over it? There's characters that have those kinds of discussions throughout the film. That's a lot of the drama about whether or not this kind of information should be released. And I think the conclusion that Spielberg ultimately gets to with this film, though it's certainly, you could call it naive, you definitely could call it corny. If you don't like cornball Spielberg, this movie will not be for you. But I think the thing that I thought of it the most as, it just has a lot of faith in humanity, and I think that's a really beautiful idea, and it's something that my friends and I that I saw it with when we came out of the theater, we all kind of felt like we could use that right now. This movie's far from perfect, but the fact that it sent me out of the theater with that feeling is something I'll remember. The movie looks incredible as well. I was lucky enough to see a 70mm print of it, and I think it's got a lot of interesting contrast throughout it, this kind of cold world with a lot of really warm cinematography at certain kind of emotional beats of the film. It's a lot of combining. It reminded me a little bit of the way that The Fabelmans is shot at times. Gorgeous to look at as always with Spielberg. So I'm going to give Disclosure Day 4 stars. While I said that there are some issues, I thought about with the characterization. Ultimately, I think it's just a really fun kind of set piece heavy thriller that goes back to a lot of Spielberg's core interests. And it's really interesting for him to make a movie like this in his old age, to revisit this subject, this very exterior subject about what's in our universe, what is kind of beyond the cosmos, but then really have it be such a human drama. Really, what matters in terms of the effect of whether this information about aliens gets released isn't so much about the aliens themselves or our relationships with them. It's about our relationships with each other. And I think that's a really, really cool idea for a movie executed by one of the masters of the craft. So anyway, that's going to do it for this video. If you like this review, please like it down below and subscribe to the channel if you're new. I've got more reviews coming out soon, other videos as well, and I'll see you guys in the next one. See ya.